Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, Tudorlini Test Prep. Today we'll be going over Ottocento number 26, Percent Relations. The goal of the Ottocento course is to teach students everything they need to know about the digital SAT math exam. Please see the link in the description to download this video's worksheet for free. Let's get started. Okay guys, so this is just a recap on percent multipliers. I've already gone over this in my previous videos, but if you haven't looked at it in a while, you might want to jot this down. The really important thing is that you understand these keywords at the top and how they relate to the expression in the second row, because we're going to be doing lots of calculations with those expressions. So, one of the most confusing things to people when I'm tutoring is being able to convert like a percent equation like this into its counterpart. So let's say instead of having A by itself, we wanted B by itself. What we would do is we would divide both sides by 0.4, which would look like this. And if you think about it, there's really like an invisible coefficient of 1 in front of the A. So that would be like 1 over 0.4 A equals B. And then, if you don't know what 1 divided by 0.4 is, that's okay. Calculator's allowed on the entire exam. So type 1 divided by 0.4 into my calculator. I see it's 2.5 or 5 halves. Since it comes out nicely, why don't I use 2.5? And we can write B equals 2.5A. This is the only time I'm going to go over this in great detail. So if you don't understand this, pause it and make sure you understand it. I don't know why this always confuses people so much on a calculator exam. If I, you guys have one of the most powerful math educational tools at your disposal alongside your physical calculator the entire exam. If I have to tell someone one more time that 1 divided by 0.4 is 2.5, I'm going to lose it. So hopefully, again, guys, when you're doing this and you're following through on the rest of my video, I don't expect you to do decimal calculations in your head. You're welcome to use the calculator. These problems are hard. There's no sense in trying to go and change to a fraction or do long division or something in the middle of the problem. So you got to be able to go back and forth between like the A equals 0.4B and the B equals 2.5A on a dime. Okay, so now that we've established that these two equations are the same, they're just different versions of the same equation. That's what I marked with this like orange arrow. College Board can now ask you a bunch of questions about it, and you have to figure out which equation you have to use. So let's say the question says A is P% less than B. Well, I see it starts with A is, and is means equals. So the beginning of the equation should start with A equals, and that is indeed the first equation. So the multiplier that goes with the P% less is 0.4. And you see B is just B. So we talked about in the table, P% less would be like 1 minus P over 100. That's equal to 0.4. We can subtract 1 from both sides, and then multiply both sides by negative 100, and we get P equals 60. You can also take away 1 and then multiply by 100. That's just a little numeric shortcut. I went over that in the Ottocento number 1. You can also graph it if you don't want to do the math in your head, if you're worried you're going to make a numerical error. Really, either of those are fine. I'm just going through the algebra for the sake of the video. Okay, so same context, same problem and everything, just a different equation at the end. All I got to do is tweak the wording of the end of the problem slightly, and it changes the answer a bunch. So this one says B is something something. So B is, that means B equals, so B should be by itself. Well, we're going to use that equation on the right. B equals 2.5A. So the multiplier is 2.5. And P% of, that's P over 100, equals 2.5. We multiply both sides by 100, and we get 250. You can also just do this on a calculator. Notice how changing the wording slightly changed the answer quite a bit. Okay, this one says A is P% of B. So A is, so we want the A to be isolated, so we'll use that first equation again. P% of, well, to change that to a decimal, you just multiply by 100. So we'll do a very similar process. We get 40. And you could also just do that on a calculator or graph it if you were unsure. And lastly, B is P% more than A. Well, we want B is, so that's B equals. So the multiplier this time, instead of 0.4, is 2.5. So P% more, that's an increase. 1 plus P over 100 equals 2.5. We subtract 1 from both sides, and then multiply by 100. And we get 150. You can use that formula that I taught you, take away 1, multiply by 100. Or you can graph it as well if you don't want to do the math or do out the algebra. Notice how I could give you one equation and ask you 4 different questions about the equation. That is very tricky, so you got to be careful. You got to read it carefully, make sure you pick out the right one. So whenever I start teaching this in tutoring, what I do is I put this equation on the board, and then I say, B is P% of A. What is P? And almost everyone says the answer is 40. That's just because they read it too fast and they don't realize that it says B equals in the sentence and that you need to get B by itself, not A. So don't forget, you might get to the end of a long problem and you might have to go and switch it to his counterpart, which is what I'm going to call that for the rest of the video, in order to answer the question correctly. So make sure that you've got the correct variable isolated and that it is in terms of the correct other variable. So B is isolated and I have it in terms of A. So I could answer that question. B is P% of A. One more thing before we do examples. You might get an equation. I'm going to give you in the slides, not in the worksheet maybe, but in the slides, I'm going to give you ones that mostly just work out nicely. But they don't always do that on the actual SAT. So let's say I had A equals 2.87B, and I wanted to find his counterpart, where I would do 1 divided by 2.87, and I get this big messy decimal, and I get a fraction that's not that nice either. So we get these 2 kind of not appealing ways to write it, 100 over 287A or a big decimal. So me personally, I like to use the fraction, but I'm also a bit of a freak in nature. Okay, so you might not feel the need to be as precise. I think a good kind of middle of the road solution, if you see one like this, would maybe be to, usually these would be multiple choice if they give you numbers that don't work out nicely. Or maybe they tell you to round at the end, so it doesn't matter. So what I would suggest you do is maybe round to 4 decimal places. So maybe I would write this as B equals 0.3484A and then do the rest or try to answer the question. And it will probably give you enough precision to get the correct answer. So I might use the fractions, but just know if you want to round, that's totally fine. Okay, so this one isn't so bad. It's really more of a warm-up. I guess my goal with this, even though there's other ways to do this one, was to show you that what we're going to practice today even works and applies to easier questions that we've kind of already gone over how to do in previous videos. So I guess the point is, when in doubt, just go left to right. So 240 is means equals. P% greater than, that means P% increase, which is 1 plus P over 100. And 60 means 60. So you see how I just went left to right and pieced that equation together using the sentence. Now I can solve this equation. So I'm going to divide both sides by 60. I'm going to take away 1 from both sides. And then I'm going to multiply both sides by 100. And we get P equals 300 as the answer. Again, you could also just graph this one, get the answer in 2 seconds. But the point is, you're not going to know what to graph if you don't know how to do the words to math. And this words to math that I just did at the board with the colors is crucial to these harder problems we're about to do. So make sure you understand this one. Okay, so why don't we first look at the first sentence. We have A is 230% greater than B. Well, a 230% increase, my calculator tells me that's a multiplier of 3.3. So that's A equals 3.3B. And you see the A goes with the A, is means equals, 230% greater, that's 3.3 as we just discussed, and B is B. So that is one of the equations to this problem. Let's finish deciphering the rest before we even come up with a game plan. So if we look at the second sentence, we have B is 80% less than 55. Well, my calculator tells me that an 80% decrease is a multiplier of 0.2. So I'm going to write B equals 0.2 times 55. And you can once again see B is means equals. 80% less means a multiplier of 0.2. And 55 is just 55. now that we've done that words to math, we can solve the question a lot more easily. Well, I noticed for this one, 0.2 times 55, that's something I can just compute quite easily, right? So 0.2 times 55 is 11. We can now substitute 11 into the other equation, and we see that A is equal to 3.3 times 11, or 36.3. I could also type some of these equations into Desmos, and it would just start spitting out values for me. But these are going to get more complicated. We're going to start doing ones with less and less numbers, so just keep in mind, that's not always going to just give you the answer. We're going to do harder ones in a minute. Okay, pause this video and take a second to look at this example. We'll start with A is 75% greater than B. Well, a 75% increase is a multiplier of 1.75. So we can write the equation A equals 1.75B. For this one, a multiplier of 28% of, all we do is divide by 100, that's 0.28. So we can write the equation B equals 0.28C. So now that we have our two equations, there's not really any values they gave us. We actually can't figure out any of the values, and this is like the meat and potatoes of this video. So what the heck are we gonna do? Well, here's the strategy. We're gonna look at the prompt at the end of the question, and we see it wants us to relate A and C. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna substitute for whatever letter we don't want. So we do not want the letter B. So to achieve an equation relating A and C, we're going to substitute for B. Well, very conveniently, I see that one of the equations already has B by itself. So this one's kind of prime for substituting. So let's take him and put him into where B is in the first equation. So instead of A equals 1.75B, I will write A equals 1.75 parentheses 0.28C. We can now multiply 1.75 times 0.28, and we get A is equal to 0.49C. And this will probably help us answer the question a lot more because the equation relates A with C. Okay, so it says A is, so that means A should be isolated. A equals. So I think this equation is good. We don't need to find his counterpart. We're going to do P% less than, that multiplier is 0.49. And so I can write 1 minus P over 100 equals 0.49. And that, if you solve that equation, you'll get an answer of 51. We can also do the calculations on Desmos, kind of two good ways to do that. Seems like we did a good job. Okay, pause this video and write this question down. See if you can translate the two sentences to the equations we're about to put on the screen. So that second sentence says B is 160% of the number A. Well, 160 divided by 100 is 1.6. So that's B equals 1.6A. The other one is 68% less. So 1 minus 68 over 100, that's 0.32. So this would be C equals 0.32A. So we got our two equations. So what's our strategy? Well, once again, we look at the prompt and we want an equation relating B and C. We actually do not want the letter A. So we are going to substitute for A. However, unlike the last one, neither of the equations already have A by itself. So I'm going to randomly pick one. How about the equation on the left? And substitute and try to figure out what A is using that first equation, B equals 1.6A. So we have B equals 1.6A. We're going to try to find his counterpart. We divided both sides by 1.6. And we get A is equal to 0.625B. So his helpful equivalent counterpart is that blue one, and we're going to replace him back on the previous slide. Okay, now that we've got A by itself, we're primed to take this expression and substitute it in for A into the other equation. So we get C equals 0.32 parentheses 0.625B. 0.32 times 0.625, is 0.2. So the equation we got is C equals 0.2b. Now the question says percent of, so I can take the multiplier and multiply by 100, and I get a final answer of P equals 20, right? Wrong. You have fallen for my biggest trap of all time. This question says B is P% of C. That means we have to get B isolated and use his counterpart, B equals 5C. So the multiplier isn't 0.2, it's really 5. So we multiply 5 by 100, and we get a for real final answer of P equals 500. It's worth mentioning that you also could have gotten that answer much faster had you instead substituted using the right equation. So C equals 0.32a. His counterpart is A equals 3.125c. We substitute him in, and you see, guys, we get the same result without having to switch it around. It just comes out naturally to B equals 5c. There's kind of two main ways of doing it. And again, I would argue for this one wasn't really easier than the other. You should just do what felt more natural to you. And you see, all I got to do is slightly tweak the wording at the end of the question, and the answer changes dramatically. And you can imagine it's so easy when you're nervous on test day, the letters are swimming around. It's so easy to just even be mindful of this and then just read it incorrectly and get it wrong. I've actually done it myself before. So just be really careful that regardless of however you get the equation that you need to answer the question, that you are using the correct version of him to get the answer to the question they're asking you. Read it very carefully. Okay, this will be our final example before the worksheet. This one's very challenging. Please pause the video and see if you can do the words to math to write the two equations that the problem gave us. So we've got 3,592% of. I do that on a calculator that tells me the multiplier is 35.92. This gives us an equation of Q equals 35.92 times the quantity R plus S. 84% less. And really the only thing here is that the sum of the positive numbers, sum means to add. So the sum is R plus S. So just make sure your mental note, if you didn't know that, keyword sum, that's why I did R plus S, because it said sum. If it said difference, maybe I would subtract. Okay, now it says 84% less. Well, that's a multiplier of 0.16. So the second equation is S equals 0.16R. Now we got to come up with a game plan. It says what percent of S is Q? It wants an equation relating S and Q. So which letter is the odd man out? Which letter do we not want? We do not want R. So we're going to substitute for R. Now, specifically, we can't substitute for R using the first equation because there's too many letters in that one. Maybe we could, but it would just make the problem a lot harder. I think definitely it's going to be way easier if we substitute using the equation on the right because there's a lot less going on in that one. So let's take the second equation and isolate for R. So we divide both sides by 0.16 and we get R equals 6.25S. Now we're primed to substitute. R is by himself. We can put him into the first equation. And we get 35.92 times 6.25S plus S. Well, 6.25S plus 1S is just 7.25S. And now we can do 35.92 times 7.25. And we get Q equals 260.42S. Nice, beautiful equation that relates Q and S just like the question wants. So now here's the source of confusion. Do we want the nice normal version? Or do we want his sick and twisted evil counterpart that looks scary? We don't want to go near him if we don't have to, right? Well, we actually want to use the first one. And it's because the end of the question says, is Q? The Q is going with the is. Q needs to be isolated. Q equals. So we take that multiplier, 260.42% of, just like all the other ones. All we did was multiply by 100. And we get a final answer of 26,042. So this one was just kind of weird because instead of phrasing the actual like prompt as like a statement, it was a question. And like, you know, in English especially, words kind of get tossed around when you phrase something as a question rather than a statement. So just be really careful with that. I know English is hard. I'm doing my best to help you guys. Hopefully this example clears up any future ones for you. So one more thing that I might throw on the worksheet that wasn't in the Ottocento number 1 worksheet. I don't know. I might put a couple things on there. I haven't decided yet. But is this concept called net percent change? It's very closely related to this topic. I already have a video on that. It's in my shorts tab. It's pictured on the left. Go watch that if you want a deeper dive before you go do the worksheet. Here's just an example. So let's say I have a 25% increase, followed by a 40% decrease, followed by a 350% increase. We would calculate all the multipliers. And then to find the net percent multiplier, we would multiply them all together. So if you multiply these all together in your calculator, you get a net percent multiplier of 3.375. And then if you wanted to find the net percent change, you could just do all the stuff we were doing before. So take away 1, multiply by 100. And we get positive 237.5 because it's positive. That's an increase. So it's a 237.5% increase. So doing all those percent changes in a row gave us a net 237.5% increase. Again, if you want a deeper dive on that, go watch that video that's on the left side of the screen. I also recently made a formula sheet on percents. This is linked in my posts tab. You might just have to scroll down a couple posts depending on when you're watching this. You might have to scroll down a bunch. Definitely go check that out. If someone is confused, just ask in the comments and I'll link it in the comments as well. I also got a formula sheet on quadratics that's with it. So these are like big helps to review before your exam, and also if you're doing the worksheet that goes with this video. So definitely check those out. Okay, it's time for the final review. Remember to download the free final review worksheet using the link in the description. Try to complete the worksheet yourself before watching the rest of the video. And I highly encourage you to ask relevant questions about this topic in the comments section. Let's jump to the whiteboard for the final review. Okay, question 1. So this is just a warm-up. We did questions like this in the Ottocento number 1. I got 75 is means equals p% less than 156.25. So I can write 75 equals 1 minus p over 100 times 156.25. To solve this equation, I'm going to divide both sides by 156.25. I'm getting 0.48 equals 1 minus p over 100. Now I'm going to take away 1 from both sides, and I get negative 0.52 equals negative p over 100. And now I will multiply both sides by negative 100, and I get p equals 52. You could also solve this really quick on Desmos. Let's go do that. Okay, so I just typed this equation in. The only difference is instead of putting p, I just put an x so that Desmos would plot it. That's not that big of a change. I'm just going to zoom out, and I click on the x-axis, and it tells me the answer is also 52. Okay, question 2. So before we even start, I'm going to go, and I really don't want to do this in my head because I feel like I'll make a mistake. Why don't we go to our calculator and figure out what those multipliers are? So I'm going to do 440% of. All I gotta do is change it to a decimal. That's 4.4. And then 90% more. That's 1 plus 90 over 100 because that's an increase. Okay, so this guy is 4.4. And then this other one down here is 1.9. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Now we're ready to go and translate this. So A is means equals 4.4b. And the second one, it says B means equals. So B equals 1.9 times 90. Well, that's pretty convenient. 1.9 times 90 is something I can just figure out. So I'll just do that on my physical calculator. I get B equals 171. That is not the answer, but I'll put a box around it because it's important. We can take him and put him in here. And we get A equals 4.4 times 171. So this means A equals 752.4. And that is the answer. Neither here nor there, but I think the fraction might not fit in the Blue Book app. So I don't know. If it's terminating, I always just use the decimal anyway. Okay, question 3. Just like the last one, you'll notice I highlighted where the percent multipliers are talked about. So let's go and just before we even do anything, just go figure out what those are. So 36% less, that's 1 minus 36/100. Okay, so that one is 0.64. We should jot that down. And now we're going to do 0.2% of, so 0.2%. We're just going to change that to a decimal. To do that, we divide by 100. So that's 0.002. So let's write him down. And now it should be much easier to do the words to math. So the first equation is A equals 36% less, that's 0.64. B, and the second equation is 16 means equals 0.002 times the number A. Okay, well, I'm noticing with this one of these equations only has one unknown. It's this one. So if I divide both sides by 0.002, I get 8,000 is equal to A, and I don't think that's the answer, but that is important, so I'll put a box around it. So now we can take him and substitute him into this equation. So we can write 8,000 equals 0.64b, and now we got to solve for b. So to do that, we'll divide both sides by 0.64, and I am getting 12,500 is equal to b, and that is the answer. Okay, question 4, same deal. I highlighted the percent multipliers. Let's go compute them before we even begin the question. We'd hate to just do that in our head and get that wrong from the get-go, right? So 92% decrease, that's 1 minus 92/100. That's 0.08. Let me jot that down. So this first one is 0.08. And now we're going to do 110% more than. So that is 1 plus 110 over 100. We get a multiplier of 2.1. Okay, now I'm ready to come back over here and start doing the words to math. So we've got K equals 0.08 J. And then for the other one, I got K equals 110%, so that's 2.1 times L. Okay, so I look at the prompt and it wants me to relate J and L. So the letter we don't want is K. So we're going to substitute for K because we don't want K. We want him to drop out of the system. So very convenient. Kind of notice, oh, wait, we got K by itself in both of them. So we could substitute for K very easily. As a matter of fact, we just kind of glue them together. So 0.08J equals 2.1 L. And now the question is, which letter do I want by itself? Well, it says J is. So I think I want J by itself. So to accomplish that, I'm going to divide both sides by 0.08. So I am getting J equals 2.1 divided by 0.08 is 26.25 L. So we are in business. This is not the answer, but this is going to help us find the answer to the question. So it says P% of. So to change it to a percent of, all we have to do is take the multiplier and multiply by 100. So 26.25 times 100 is 2,625. And that is the answer. Okay, question 5, same deal. we're going to take these percent wordings and just translate it to a multiplier. Let's just do it on the calculator real quick. 40% of 40% as a decimal is 0.4. 65% increase, that is 1.65. Let me jot these down. 0.4 is that first sentence, and then that other one is 1.65. Okay, now we're ready to do the words to math. So it says S is, that's S equals 40% of, that's 0.4. T. And then the other one is T equals 65% more, that's 1.65, as we just talked about. U. We look at the prompt now, and it wants us to relate S and U. So this means we want to substitute for T. We want him to drop out of the system, so we're going to substitute for T. Well, very conveniently, we already have T by itself in one of the equations, so we can take this and substitute it into the other one. So we can write this as S equals 0.4, and then instead of T, we're going to put his equivalent, 1.65 U. Now I'm going to do 0.4 times 1.65. What is that? Okay, I am getting S equals 0.66 U. So now, which letter did they want us to get by itself, S or U? Well, the verbiage, the wording, makes it seem like S is. It should be like S equals, and we got S equals. So I feel like we're good. I feel like we don't need to do anything else with this. So this is what's going to help us get the answer. So the multiplier is 0.66, but this time it says P% less. So essentially what we just discovered is 1 minus P over 100, P% less, is equal to that multiplier, 0.66. You can now go and solve that equation, or there's some stuff we can do quickly on Desmos, so why don't I show that to you? Okay, guys, so the answer is 34. It's a 34% decrease. You see if I click on it, the equation that I graphed, I get 34. You can also do this little shortcut I taught you guys, subtract 1, then multiply by 100. That's essentially just the algebra. Notice that it tells us negative 34. The answer is not negative 34. The negative just means it's a decrease, so do not put negative 34. That's not the answer. It's positive 34. It's a 34% decrease. We don't need to say the negative twice. And that's basically it. I would suggest if this is confusing you, when you're done, just plug it back in to make sure it kind of makes intuitive sense. So if I do a 34% decrease, do I get 0.66, a multiplier 0.66? Yes, I do. And that is what's in the equation. So the answer is 34. Okay, question 6. Let's go compute the multipliers first. So we got 16% less, 1 minus 16 slash 100. That's 0.84, 375% of. All I got to do is make it a decimal. That's 3.75. So this guy is 0.84. And that guy there is 3.75. Now we're ready to do the words to math. So it says A is A equals 0.84C. And B is 3.75C. We got to come up with a strategy. I look at the prompt. We want an equation relating A and B. So we got to get rid of the odd man out. So we're going to substitute for C. And what's kind of inconvenient about this is that none of the C's are by itself. So I'm going to get one of them by itself and then plug it into the other one. It doesn't really matter which one you do. How about I do this one? I'm going to divide both sides by 0.84. 1 divided by 0.84 is a big messy decimal. I'm going to round it. So how about I write C equals 1.1905A. Notice it's multiple choice. This is probably going to be enough for us to get the right answer, right? Okay, so now we'll take him. Now that we've got C by itself, we'll take him and we'll put him into the other equation for C. So I get B equals 3.75. times 1.1905a. Now I'm going to do 1.1905 times 3.75. And I'm getting b equals, again rounding, 4.4644a, something like that. And now I got to look at the prompt. So it says a is, so I need to get a by itself. Oh, very annoying. Okay, so now I'm going to divide both sides by 4.4644. 1 divided by 4.4644, and doing some quick rearranging, I get a equals, I'm getting 0.22399. So how about 0.224a? Sorry, b. And this now looks a lot like what the question's asking us about. So we just figured out p% less that multiplier, 1 minus p over 100, is equal to that multiplier, 0.224. Okay, let's go do some fast maths on Desmos. Okay, pick your poison. Either do the arithmetic, you don't have to do both these, either do the arithmetic or graph it, whichever you want, I don't care. It's telling me about 77.6. It is looking like choice B is the answer. Okay, question 7. We didn't do one like this in the lecture, but keep in mind, guys, all these things could apply to a story problem. So this is a great example of like these relation concepts showing up in a story problem, and this is very similar to some Blue Book app questions that show up. So what's annoying about these like years is like I don't really know what to name them, right? So how about this? 2020. 20 starts with a T. So how about I call him T for 20? I don't know. And then we'll call this guy 15. 15 starts with an F. So how about we call him F? And then was, that's very similar to is, that means equals. And then 0.74 times. Okay, so I'm going to write T equals 0.74 times F. Now, if you look at this question, it says blah, 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 is the 2015 is. So the 15, the F, should be isolated, but it's not. So this question wants us to find the counterpart of this equation, but in a story problem. Very interesting. So we're going to get F by itself. We're going to do 1 divided by 0.74 on both sides. Just like I told you guys, you could use the fraction if you want, but why don't we just round to 4 decimal places or something? That'll probably be close enough to get us the right answer. So I am getting his counterpart as F equals 1 divided by 0.74 is 1.351, rounding to like 4e. So this question is asking us about that. And it says p% of. Well, we now know the multiplier is 1.3514. If we just change him by multiplying by 100, we get like 1.135.14, which rounded to the nearest whole number would be about 135. We round down because 1 is next to the ones place and it is 4 or smaller. Okay, now looking at the second question, read it very carefully. You'll notice it's not a trick. I didn't switch it up on you. It's the same. It's asking about the same equation. It wants F by itself. So we're still talking about this one, but I did change the wording very slightly, and this will change the answer quite a bit. This one says p% more than. So p% more than, that's 1 plus p over 100. That's going to be equal to the same multiplier. So just that slight tweaking to the words will change the answer quite a bit. Let's jump to Desmos. Okay, my calculator is telling me that this is about a 35.14% increase. And it once again says to the nearest whole number. So I'm going to round that to the nearest whole number. We once again have a number 4 or below, so we're going to round down. So this would be about 35. So 2 big takeaways for this question. Slightly tweaking the words, either changing the order or changing the phrasing of the percent, can change the answer quite a bit. How many people would have read this too fast and put 35 for the first one instead of 135? The other takeaway is, oh, wait a minute. We can write percent relation equations for story problems as well. It doesn't have to just be these abstract A and B, all that. I hope this helped. Okay, question 8. Once again, let's take these percent wordings and go change them to their multipliers. 2,685% more, 2685 over 100. That is 27.85, 34% of that as a decimal, 34% as a decimal is 0.34. So let me write this down. 27.85 and 0.34. Great, let's come back over here. So the first equation we got A means equals 27.85. The sum of the positive numbers B and C. So we're going to do sum, that's add B plus C. And then the other equation is B means equals 0.34. C. Now we look at the prompt and we see that it wants an equation relating A and B, but it does not want C. So we're going to substitute for C. And furthermore, we're going to use that equation on the right just because it's a little bit less busy. So I'm going to divide both sides by 0.34. And I'm going to round once again. So I am getting C equals 2.9412B, something like that. Not the answer, but let's just put a box around that. Now that we have C by itself, we can put him in here. We get A equals 27.85. B plus 2.9412B. Okay, 1 plus 2.9412. That is 3.9412B. And now we're going to do 27.85 times 3.9412. And I'll once again round to 4 decimal places. I'm getting A equals 109.7624B. And now, moment of truth, we got to look, which letter do they want us to guess by itself? So it says is B, so that means equals B. So we should probably get B by itself. So we got to rearrange this, find his counterpart. We're going to divide both sides by 109.7624. I'm just going to do this on a calculator. I am getting B equals 0.0091A. And I believe the question says percent of. So to change the multiplier to a percent, we just multiply by 100. So that is giving me about 0.91%. And that is looking a lot like choice C, which is the answer. Okay, question 9. Once again, let's go find those percent multipliers. 1458% more, that's an increase. 1 plus 1458 over 100. And then 262% of, we just changed that to a decimal, divide by 100. Okay, so I get that first multiplier is 15.58. And the second multiplier is 2.62. So I'll jot that down as well. Okay, now we got to do the words to math. So it says C is, so that's C equals 15.58. And then it says the positive difference between A and B. So we got to subtract them. So do I do A minus B or B minus A? Well, it says A is bigger than B. So for the positive difference, we put the bigger one first. So A is bigger. We're going to put him first, A minus B. And for the second one, it says A is, so that's A equals. And we're going to do 2.62 B. All right, now we look at the prompt. We want an equation relating B and C. So we do not want A. So we are going to substitute for A. Very conveniently, we already have A by itself. That is super nice. So we're going to take him and put him into where A is in the other equation. So we carry out that substitution, and we get C equals 15.58. Instead of A, we're going to put 2.62B, his equivalent, minus B. Well, 2.62B minus B, 2.62 minus 1 is just 1.62. So this becomes 1.62B. And now I'm going to do 15.58 times 1.62. And I'm getting C equals 25.2396 B. Now, if I look at the prompt, are we good or do we need to find his counterpart? Hopefully we're good. I really don't want to find a messy decimal that goes with that. That was actually a really nice clean decimal I didn't round. Okay, so it says C is, so C equals. C should be next to the equals by itself. And it looks like it is, so this guy is good. Now make sure you read it very carefully. Lots of people would just multiply by 100. That would be wrong. It says P% more. So that multiplier, 1 plus P over 100, that's a P% increase, is equal to that multiplier, 25.2396. So you got to do a little bit more than just multiply it by 100. Let's see what Desmos tells us. Okay, very convenient. It seems like whichever way I do it, whether I do the arithmetic or if I graph it, I am getting a P of 2,423.96% increase. And the question did say, it said to round it to the nearest whole number. So the ones place is right here, but 9 is 5 or bigger, so we need to round up. So instead of 2423 to the nearest whole number, that would be 2424, which is the answer. Okay, question 10. Go for this one. Not really much of a relations question, but in the same vein. So what we're going to do is we have a bunch of percent multipliers in a row. Why don't we first go find all of those? So we got a 200% increase, 1 plus 200 divided by 100. Then we got a 45% decrease, 1 minus 45 divided by 100. And then we got an 8% increase, 1 plus 8 divided by 100. So now to find the net percent multiplier across like the entire problem, what we're going to do is we're just going to multiply all those together. So 3 times 0.55 times 1.08. And I will do that on the screen as well. So 3 times 0.55 times 1.08. So I'm getting a net percent multiplier of 1.782. So the question is really important. Does it want us to find the percentage of, or does it want us to find the percent change? Well, it says net percentage increase. So this really important word, increase, tells us it wants us to find the percent increase. So that multiplier is equal to a P% increase. 1 plus P over 100 is equal to 1.782. You can do that algebra by hand, or you can compute it really quick on Desmos. Let's jump to Desmos. Okay, so if you do the algebra, do the arithmetic, or graph it, you should get 78.2. So this entire 3% changes in a row nets to a 78.2% increase, which looks like it gives us choice A as an answer. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for watching until the very end of my video. I really do appreciate it. Be sure to comment below your thoughts on the video and worksheet. Did you find them helpful? Like the video and subscribe for more digital SAT math content. And if you need tutoring, my website is linked in the description. I tutor SAT math and all math subjects from about 7th grade to AP/early college level. Thanks for stopping by, and good luck studying.